Welcome, listeners, to Against the Current, the podcast where we dive into stories of ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges. Today's tale is one that captivated the internet, a story of a veteran, a stolen inheritance, and a breathtaking act of hydrological justice. My guest is the woman at the very center of the storm, Jake Morrison. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Chloe. It's good to be here, talking about it from the other side.
Jake, let's start at the moment everything came to a head. The story goes viral with an image. You, silent, sliding a century-old document across a table as an eviction notice sits between you and an HOA representative. What was going through your mind in that absolute silence?
Honestly, a strange, almost surreal sense of calm. It was the calm you get after months of planning a complex operation, when all the pieces are finally in place and there's nothing left to do but execute. The man across from me, his name was Mr. Henderson from some property management firm. He was sweating in his cheap suit. He just informed me that the Willowbrook Estates Homeowners Association was the legal owner of 47 acres of my family's land. He called it a straightforward adverse possession claim. I looked at that eviction notice, and then I looked out the window at the construction crews on what used to be my grandfather's pasture. I thought about Pops, about the dam he built with his own hands, and about the water that was rightfully ours. I didn't say a word, because there was nothing to say. Words had failed. It was time for the documents to speak. So, I opened the fireproof lockbox I keep under my bed, pulled out that single, brittle piece of parchment from 1923 and slid it across the kitchen table. The deed for the senior water rights to the entire Willow Creek watershed. In that moment, I knew that 35 multi-million-dollar McMansions were about to get a very abrupt and very permanent geography lesson. They were about to become lakefront property.
A whistle. It's a powerful image. But to understand how we got there, we need to go back. Tell us about this land. What did it mean to your grandfather, to you?
Everything. My grandfather, Walter Morrison, everyone called him Pops, bought this land back in 1955. Austin was a sleepy college town then, all dust and cedar and the smell of barbecue. The back 40 acres were his pride and joy. Rolling hills, a beautiful grove of live oaks, and Willow Creek, this gentle, spring-fed stream that cut through the property. He wasn't a wealthy man. He was a man of the earth. He believed in stewardship, in taking care of the land so it would take care of you and your neighbors. In 1978, after a particularly bad drought hurt a lot of the local farms, he decided to build a dam. Not some massive concrete monstrosity, just a simple, well-engineered earthen dam, designed to collect rainwater and spring runoff. He was a smart man, Pops. He knew he needed to do it right, so he actually went directly to the Army Corps of Engineers. They helped him with the design, the hydrology, the permits. It was a cooperative project for flood control and watershed management. That dam wasn't for us. It was for the community. During dry spells, he'd open the spillway gates just enough to keep the downstream farms, the Santos family, Old Man Chen, in water for their crops and cattle. He always said that land wasn't just dirt you owned. It was a legacy you protected.
And you grew up there.
I did. I carved my initials in the big oak tree by the creek. I learned to hunt in those hills. That's where I decided I wanted to be an engineer, watching Pops and the Army Corps guys talk about water flow and soil composition. It's why I joined the Army Corps myself. I did 2 tours in Afghanistan, not just kicking down doors, but specializing in water management and infrastructure. Building wells, managing irrigation in a war zone. It teaches you 2 things fast. One, how precious, clean, accessible water is. And 2, how quickly people will fight and die over it. I just never thought I'd be fighting that same fight back home.
What happened while you were deployed?
Pops passed away. It was during my 2nd tour. It wrecked me, but there was nothing I could do. The property went into a trust. My sister, Sarah, she's a good person, but she lives in California. Works in tech. She knows as much about Texas land law as I do about surfing. She hired a local property management company, Lone Star Land Services, to handle the taxes and basic upkeep. She set everything on autopay. The problem was she never actually looked at the tax assessments or the statements. She trusted the system.
And that's when the wolves started circling?
That's when Maggie Thornwell entered the picture. Margaret Maggie Thornwell, 52 years old, president of the Willowbrook Estates Homeowners Association. Picture this, a woman who drives a white BMW X7 and treats tennis outfits like a uniform. She had that particular brand of passive-aggressive Southern sweetness that's honed to a razor's edge by age 45. The kind where she'll smile while she's stabbing you in the back and make it sound like she's doing you a favor. Her husband, Rick, was a city councilman. That's important. He was the political muscle. Maggie was the field commander. She had a reputation for neighborhood beautification, which was really just a polite term for forcing out anyone who didn't fit her vision of suburban perfection.
How did they target your land?
Adverse possession. It's an old, often misused law. The idea is that if a piece of land is just sitting there, abandoned, and someone else moves onto it, improves it, and uses it openly for a certain number of years, they can eventually claim ownership. It was meant to prevent land from lying fallow forever. But developers and aggressive HOAs have weaponized it. They see a property owned by an out-of-state heir, managed by a disinterested company. It's like blood in the water. They started small. Their residents would accidentally mow a little further onto our property each week. Then they put up a fence just a few feet over the line. Then a playset. They were improving it. And because Sarah wasn't here, and the management company was asleep at the wheel, no one challenged them. While I was dodging IEDs, they were filing paperwork. I came home in August of 2023. I was done with the Army. My head finally in a good place, ready to come back to the land I loved. I drove down that familiar gravel road, the dust pluming behind my truck, past that old oak tree with my initials still visible. I was expecting to see the rolling pastures, the dams sparkling in the brutal Texas sun. Instead, I found an invasion. Construction crews. The roar of diesel bulldozers, the acrid smell of freshly poured concrete. Survey stakes were scattered across my back 40 like some kind of hostile flag-planting ceremony.
What did you do?
I marched right up to the Furman, my heart hammering against my ribs. I said, "You're on private property." He barely looked up from his clipboard. "Sorry, buddy," he said, not sounding sorry at all. "We got permits and everything. This is Willowbrook Estates property now." I called the police. Officer Martinez showed up, a decent guy, but he looked deeply uncomfortable. He explained the adverse possession claim. He said it was a civil matter. And then Maggie made her entrance.
Questions about the life story. The golf cart?
The golf cart. She rolled up like a suburban warlord surveying her new conquest. "You must be Jake," she said, her voice dripping with that fake honey. "We heard you were coming home. Your family, well, they just abandoned this land, honey. We're putting it to good use for the community." I told her this was my grandfather's farm. She just smiled, this tight, condescending little smile. "The law's the law," she said, and then she delivered the line that really lit the fuse. She looked me right in the eye and said, "You should have stayed closer to home, soldier boy."
She knew.
She knew. They knew. I was deployed, they knew the land was vulnerable, and they pounced. But that wasn't even the worst of it. As I was walking the property line, my boots crunching on shredded topsoil, I saw it. The creek. Willow Creek. Or what was left of it. Her construction crews had dug a new channel, diverting the water away from my property, away from Pops's dam. They were piping it into their own system for their fountains and sprinklers and artificial ponds. The water level in our dam was dropping visibly, day by day. 45 years of careful, community-minded water management being bled dry for their decorative water features. That's when I knew this wasn't just a property dispute. This was war. A war over the most fundamental resource there is.
So you lawyered up.
My first instinct, yes. I hired the first attorney I could find. Big mistake. This guy with an office all shiny brass and mahogany listened to my story, looked over the paperwork, and quoted me $85,000 just to start challenging the zoning change. He said it was a tough case. Turns out, while I was overseas, Councilman Rick had pushed through an emergency zoning modification. My family's land magically went from agricultural preservation to high-density residential. The conflict of interest was staggering, but my lawyer said fighting City Hall was expensive. So I decided to fight with the tools I had, my brain and my training. While that overpriced lawyer was shuffling papers, I went to the county courthouse. I spent days there buried in the records room, the smell of old paper and dust thick in the air. I was hunting through permits and deeds like I was hunting for IEDs in Afghanistan. And just like over there, the devil was in the details.